You're listening to The Pump Fake.
And welcome into the latest live edition of the Pump Fake, everybody, powered by FanDuel. Jarrett Bailey here with you, as always, coming off a surprising NFL trade deadline for multiple reasons. Obviously, we'll dive into all the happenings, all the big happenings from the trade deadline, and also the notable things that didn't happen on Tuesday ahead of the 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time deadline, as well as break down my power rankings heading in to week 10 of the season. So if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, youtube.com/@JBaileyNFL. If you're watching on Twitter, leave a comment, give a retweet. And if you're listening as a podcast, leave a comment, leave a review, keep following along with the show. So let's start off with the most obvious thing to start off with. The Colts trading for New York Jets all-pro cornerback Sauce Gardner. Jets get 2 first-round picks as well as wide receiver A.D. Mitchell in return for Gardner's services. And one of the bigger surprise trades, not just of this season, obviously, but in recent memory, a guy not just getting traded in season. We don't see too many surprise star trades in season. I think the biggest surprise one that caught everybody off guard was 2014 when the Browns traded Trent Richardson to the Browns. And even then, that turned out to be a waste for the Colts who traded for Trent Richardson back then. I believe they sent a first-round pick to Cleveland in that deal. So yeah, we see guys get moved, but when they do, it's usually in the offseason, once the new league year starts, or, being a Steelers fan, we saw Jalen Ramsey go to Pittsburgh, Minkah Fitzpatrick go to Miami, and that happened at the end of June. So those are usually when we see those types of trades take place, is in the offseason. It's rare that you see an unexpected star trade take place in season. Last year we saw Devontae Adams get dealt. That was largely expected. We saw Amari Cooper get dealt. That was largely expected. It was just a matter of where, not if. But this came out of left field, and I've seen a lot of podcasts talking about it. I've seen lots of takes about this, and one that I largely agree with is that of Dan Hanzus of Heed the Call. It's a reset for the Jets, but this is a different reset though, because it is clearly coming from a place where they want to, Aaron Glenn and this new regime, want to do this thing with their guys. And if Sauce isn't one of those guys, then you get 2 first-round picks for him, which is great value in return for the Jets. And you get to kind of build this thing your way. We saw what Aaron Glenn, helped build in Detroit. And it looks like he's trying to replicate that to some degree in New York with, it doesn't matter how good a player is. If he doesn't fit what I'm doing, what I want, then we'll get him out. We'll get some good draft capital in return. And for the Jets, they had 1 win on the year. It's not as if they were a team, scrapping in the wild card race, trying to hold on to a playoff spot. It's a 1-win team that's been arguably the worst team in the NFL. So, and since they drafted Sauce Gardner, they've been one of the worst teams in the NFL. So while he's a great player, it wasn't making much of a difference. And so getting 2 first-round picks for him over the next 2 years, they now have 3 first-round picks in 2027 and 4 in total over the next two drafts. So getting this kind of return for them makes all the sense in the world. When you're a team that isn't going anywhere, you hit a hard reset button. And this is the right time to do it if you're the Jets. because Aaron Glenn's in his first year. This whole regime is in its first year. And while it hasn't yielded a lot of great results, Dan Campbell didn't have a lot of great results in his first year in Detroit. They won 4 games. So things take time to build. And it looks like Woody Johnson and Jets ownership are going to give Aaron Glenn that time to try and build what he wants to build. And for the Colts, a lot of people are going to look at it as a massive overpay. But you get an all-pro corner in return. So let's not act like Sauce Gardner isn't a great player. He certainly is. He's, one of the best handful of corners in the NFL. And offensively, the Colts are coming off a rough performance against Pittsburgh, but still, when you look at every advanced metric, every just, basic box score stat, but also EPA, DVOA, yards per drive, this is not just a great offense in 2025. It's one of the best offenses over the last 25 years. And so when you're a team like that who's sitting at 7-2, having a great season, this is what good teams are supposed to do. You're not supposed to sit on your hands and be wary of, oh man, I can't trade picks. No, you go out, you get better. And sure, trading 2 first-round picks, is that a risk to some degree? Sure. But no good thing has ever happened without a little bit of risk. Am I saying that I think the Colts are going to win the Super Bowl? No. Are they in better position to do so now than they were 9 a.m. yesterday morning? Yeah. Sauce Gardner's a terrific player. They needed a little bit of help on that side of the ball, and they went out and got it. Lou Anarumo's done a really good job with that unit this season, and now you add an all-pro to the unit in the middle of the year when you're 7-2, you're playing well. I applaud that type of aggression. Now, it very clearly does mean that they're all in on Daniel Jones. And while some people might be a little bit hesitant on that, a lot of people were hesitant on Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. I was one of them. A lot of people were hesitant last year on Sam Darnold starting the year in Minnesota because J.J. McCarthy got hurt. I was one of them. No one thought that Geno Smith was going to work in Seattle, and it did. And that's also not to say that Geno Smith is a top 10 quarterback, because he's not, and nor do I think he was when he was in Seattle, but clearly now with Vegas, that it's just not working. But what he did for them in his time there, they had a playoff appearance with Geno Smith. They won 10 games last year with Geno Smith. With Sam Darnold, the Vikings won 14 games with Sam Darnold, and now the Seahawks are one of the best teams in the NFL with Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield leads the Browns to a playoff appearance, obviously has the bit in the middle with Carolina, pit stop in Los Angeles, goes to Tampa Bay. Everybody, for the most part, thought that was going to be a team drafting in the top 5. And they've won the division every year that Baker's been there. And they've won playoff games with Baker. So while a lot of people are going to be quick to, kind of flick their nose at Daniel Jones being the guy in Indianapolis, I certainly didn't think Daniel Jones was going to be anything special this year. And again, he's not a top 10 quarterback, but the team is playing very well with him under center. And I've talked about this before, but if you're not Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, one of the, 4 to 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL, situations matter for those middle of the pack guys. And situations matter for, the bottom of the pack guys. And if they go to the right situation, they can be elevated. That's what we've seen with Daniel Jones. He was horrible with the Giants. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But you put him in an offense with Shane Steichen, who simplifies things for the quarterback. You give him a good set of weapons with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, Tyler Warren. Get him a good offensive line and a defense on the other side that's playing well. Good things can happen. Now, even the most, glass half full people when it came to the Colts wouldn't have expected what's happened so far. This is certainly the infinity glove of what could have been for the Colts. Like, this is the absolute best case scenario. But we've seen, they can be successful with Daniel Jones. Doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden a top 10 quarterback, but he's in that middle pack now with the Purdy's and, probably somewhere in there with Jared Goff and that group of guys who, right situation, you can play good football with them. They can play good football in the right situation and they can win games. So I applaud the Colts for this. I know a lot of people are going to, whine and cry about giving up 2 first-round picks. There's no guarantee any of those first-round picks would end up being good players. We know that Sauce Gardner is a good player. So I applaud it to a degree. Again, I understand that there's a little bit of inherent risk that comes with trading 2 first-round picks, but this is a good team that wanted to get better, and they did, and I applaud them for it. The Jets were very active, obviously, because they also traded defensive tackle Quinnen Williams to the Dallas Cowboys. The Jets get a 2026 second, a 2027 first, as well as defensive tackle Mozzie Smith in return for the trade. Again, is this a bit of an overpay if you're Dallas? Maybe. Giving up a 1 and a 2 for Quinnen Williams, I don't think they had to do that. But if you're the New York Jets on the other end of that line and you hear that offer, you weren't going to say no. There was kind of chatter about maybe Quinnen Williams getting traded. He's been there for a while, similar to Sauce Gardner. Obviously, Sauce came out of left field. Quinnen Williams has been there for a while. They've won nothing with him. Send him to a team that needs him. Dallas certainly does on the defensive side of the ball. And now, if you're the Cowboys, you got Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams up front. Your defensive line is certainly a lot better today. But they do have to figure out a way to get to the quarterback still and slow down the passing game. Surprised they didn't go out and make a move for someone like Reek Woolen in the secondary because their cornerbacks are not good. But getting Quinnen Williams to put next to Kenny Clark, there will certainly be better production up front from Dallas going forward. To reiterate a lot of the things about the Jets that I've already said, they've had Quinnen Williams for a while. They won nothing with him. They recognize that they needed a hard reset. They're going to get as much draft capital as they can over the next 2 drafts to build the vision that they have. Find the quarterback. That's obviously objective number 1. It's been the objective with the Jets for the last decade. They haven't got it right yet. Now, a lot of that boils down to coaching and the decisions made by ownership in terms of the whole Aaron Rodgers mess, because obviously he's playing very well in Pittsburgh, didn't do great with New York. Although Aaron Rodgers largely played fine there. It was everything around him that was very dysfunctional. That's a whole other conversation to have about the Jets. But it's clear that they have a vision in mind. They're going to get as much draft capital as they can over the next 2 years and try to build a winner. And so best of luck to Aaron Glenn and company. And, for the sake of the Jets and Jets fans, hopefully they can do it and get out of this hole that they've been in for more than 10 years. So obviously there's winners and losers that come with this thing. But one of maybe my biggest loser of the deadline is the Buffalo Bills. And I've had so many Bills fans, kind of come at me for this. It seems like it's almost split down the middle when it comes to Bills fans, which actually surprises me. Maybe it's a little bit more like 65-35 in favor of, wow, they didn't make a trade and that's a problem. But there isn't a shortage of fans who are like, they just beat the Chiefs. They only have 2 losses on the year. Why is everybody freaking out that they didn't make a trade? To which I say, they beat the Chiefs in the regular season, as they've done the previous 4 times they've played in the regular season. How did that turn out in January? We know how it turned out. The offense has clear problems. They can run the ball like hell, and that's great. But when you look at their passing game, they're 14th in the NFL in passing yards per game, and they cannot throw the ball deep. And if you want to get some numbers here, just so I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth, in terms of what Josh Allen and the Bills are doing right now in the air, if I can find it. Excuse me, I probably should have had this pulled up right away. So, Josh Allen has 10 completions of 20-plus air yards. 4 of them came in week 1. So since week 1, only 6 completions of 20 or more air yards for Josh Allen. He has 278 yards on such passes. That's 16th in the NFL. And Bills receivers are only averaging 1.7 yards of separation on throws 20 or more yards downfield. That's tied for the 5th worst in the NFL per Next Gen Stats. And they didn't go out and get a receiver. Now, I know Brandon Beane talked today and said, it takes 2 to tango. I'm just as upset as all the fans who are upset that a deal didn't get done. And while I hear Brandon Beane there, we saw what Jakobi Meyers went for. He went for a 4 and a 6. We saw what Rashid Shaheed went for. He went for a 4 and a 5. You couldn't top that? You couldn't equal it? Like, all due respect to Brandon Beane, he's not good at drafting. We've seen what the Bills' drafts have looked like over the last few years. Oddly enough, it is those picks that he's usually good with, is like those day 3 picks. But everybody who's like clutching their pearls at the suggestion of trading draft picks, what's Landon Jackson doing right now? They took him in the 3rd round, and he can't see the field. You telling me you couldn't give up a 3 for Jakobi Meyers? You couldn't outbid the Jaguars to get him? You couldn't outbid Seattle to get Rashid Shaheed, a guy who's a legitimate field stretcher, an issue downfield for defenses? That's the thing. The Bills didn't need to go out and make a superstar splash. It would have been nice for them, I'm sure, but they didn't need to make a superstar splash. And, my buddy Nate Geary talked about this with me over the offseason. They don't need, a Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson type player. They need like John Brown again, a guy who can legitimately stretch the field, be a pain in the ass for defenders on those over-the-top throws, and it's something that they've lacked. And it shows up in the numbers. They brought in Josh Palmer to be that. He certainly has not been that. They signed Elijah Moore. That was a good signing. They hardly use him for whatever reason. The Keon Coleman project is not working because he's just not a good boundary receiver. The Bills' passing game is Josh run around and do stuff and hope somebody gets open. Usually it's Dalton Kincaid, or screen passes to Khalil Shakir where he breaks 2 or 3 tackles and gets a nice gain. They don't have anybody who can consistently separate downfield. Both Myers and Rashid Shaheed could have provided that. And for whatever reason, they couldn't outbid Jacksonville, who sent a 4 and a 6 for Myers. They couldn't outbid Seattle, who sent a 4 and a 5 for Rashid Shaheed. The clutching of pearls of draft picks is so annoying, both from fans and from general managers alike, especially day 3 draft picks. Respectfully speaking, to hell with those picks. Every year, look, maybe this is why I'm not an NFL general manager, but just generally speaking, every year, if there's a guy who's a proven difference maker that I know I can get with a 5th round pick, yeah, take all my 5th round picks. I don't give a shit. I don't care about a day 3 pick. Pick number 167. Yeah, sure, take him, and I'll take the guy who's good at football. I'm not going to take an undersized defensive tackle from the Conference USA who has a high RAS score, who's going to live on my practice squad for 9 weeks until somebody gets hurt. You trade the day 3 picks for proven guys. Ask the Rams how that worked out. Les Snead won a Super Bowl doing it. And that's not to say that that's the only way to win a championship, but it's certainly to say that you can win a championship by doing that. And the fact that the Bills sat on their hands is mind-boggling to me. When you had a clear need on offense for an outside receiver and you didn't do anything. And again, it's great that they beat the Chiefs. Terrific. The Chiefs also played as horribly as they possibly could and only lost by a touchdown. Something tells me they're going to play a little bit better than that in January when the Bills and Chiefs inevitably meet up again. The Bills always win that regular season game. Frankly speaking, means nothing. For seeding purposes, sure, whatever. They're going to run into each other in the playoffs again, regardless of what the seeding was. The fact that they won that game means next to nothing to me. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. And so the fact that they did nothing, that's surprising to me. And, we'll see if it ends up coming back to Honda. Maybe we're talking about this in February and they end up winning the Super Bowl and I look like a complete idiot, I'm sure Bills fans would be very happy about it. Frankly speaking, I mean, guys, you know how big of a Josh Allen guy I am. I would be happy to be wrong. But history tells us anything, it's that they're going to look back on this and regret not making any sort of moves. In terms of other losers around the NFL, in terms of the trade deadline stuff, I was surprised that my Steelers didn't make a move similar to Buffalo, where Jacoby Myers, they were heavily linked to Jacoby Myers. They didn't get a deal done there. And everybody, like, obviously, there's no, I'm not going to pretend I have ears inside the building there. I don't. But I think that Omar Khan feels like he has to make every trade like a bargain for the Steelers because he traded Chase Claypool for a second-round pick to the Bears and completely fleeced them. And so I think he thinks that every trade that he makes needs to be this like insane bargain. And look, that's very much speculative. And I'm not going to pretend that I have ears inside that building. But the fact that they didn't get anything done and they once again will go into this offseason needing a second wide receiver, third straight offseason now, where they have that issue, that's a problem. Again, trade the day 3 picks for proven guys. I don't understand why they don't do it. That's not to say that no day 3 picks end up being good. Obviously, that's not true. But I'll take the proven commodity who is good over the small percentage chance that the 5th round pick ends up being good. So I was surprised that they didn't make a move either. And that surprised me. The Lions not making a move was also pretty surprising. Again, a guy like Reek Woolen there would have made a lot of sense. Maybe a Minkah Fitzpatrick to Detroit. Kirby Joseph's been in and out of the lineup there. I would have thought that they would have made a move. And obviously they did not. But that's the trade deadline. Other moves were made, obviously. Those are kind of the big headline ones. The Cowboys also traded for former Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson to get a little bit of help in the middle. He requested a trade after he was benched for Barrett Carter. So that gets settled. They only traded a 7th round pick to get him, though, so it feels like Cincy got a little bit fleeced there. But in terms of any other like big moves, the bigger news is, well, not the bigger, but outside of Gardner and Quinnen Williams and the Jets doing what they did, I think the biggest news is the things that didn't happen. Chris Olave stayed put. Jacoby Myers obviously went to the Jaguars, which is kind of unexpected. A lot of people thought that he would be either Pittsburgh or Buffalo bound. He goes to Jacksonville. Breece Hall stays with the Jets, even though he requested a trade. So, and look, every year there's tons of speculation about, guys that could be on the move. And for every, 8 to 10 guys that get named, maybe 1 or 2 of them get moved. So that's not too much of a surprise. But that's the trade deadline from 2025. My thoughts on that. Let's hop into the power rankings before we get on out of here. And here they are for week 10. So we'll just go down each column here. We'll start. The Los Angeles Rams are my new number 1 team. I just really love what they've been doing. They very well could be undefeated if not for a blocked field goal against Philadelphia and a fumble by Kyren Williams against the 49ers. They're 6-2 right now. They could very easily be 8-0. Matthew Stafford looks incredible at the absolute peak of his powers. Defensively, they are awesome right now. Getting a little bit more production out of guys like Emmanuel Forbes in the secondary. Really like what Los Angeles is doing right now. Would not be surprised whatsoever if they are the NFC representation in the Super Bowl. Buffalo moves up to 2. They were 9. Coming off a big win against Carolina, they defeat Kansas City at home. Again, it's a nice win and all. Do it in January, beat them when it matters. Kansas City falls a couple spots just because I really love what Los Angeles is doing, and I could not keep Buffalo below them considering what happened on Sunday. So Buffalo moves above Kansas City. Philadelphia is number 2. They had that brief 2-game losing streak, but they've looked good ever since. New England moves up 2 spots into the top 5. I'm a big believer in the Patriots, big believer in Drake May. Kind of a crazy back and forth game against the Falcons where they give up 3 touchdowns to Drake London, but they do what they need to do to win, and they are 7-2, sitting atop the AFC East. I move Indianapolis down 4 spots. Still one of the best teams in football, but a 6-turnover game, that'll certainly hurt you. They'll play Atlanta this week at home with a chance. Oh, I'm sorry. That game was in Madrid. So travel across the seas. It'll be an early kickoff here in the States, but a chance to get back on the winning side of things against Atlanta. The Seahawks move up 3 spots. They were 10 last week. They are now number 7. A lot of people probably have them a little bit higher than me, which is fine. But, this first 8, really, I mean, you could put a lot of it in any order, and I wouldn't argue with you too much. Defensively, they are great. And offensively, they're getting a lot of production out of guys that nobody saw coming. Cooper Kupp didn't play against Washington. Practice squad lifer Cody White had his first career touchdown. They're getting production from Elijah Arroyo, A.J. Barner, nice running back duo of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Sam Darnold's playing very well. And, of course, Jackson Smith and Jigba has really emerged as one of the game's best receivers. Tampa Bay stays put on the bye. They have a big game against New England at home this week. Second column, Detroit moves down after losing to Minnesota. Offensive line-wise, there's some real questions there on that left side. We'll see what that looks like going forward. Green Bay also moves down after a loss to Carolina. Green Bay is so weird to me, man. This is the team that I picked to come out of the NFC. They can look great one week and they can look absolutely awful another. One of the more unpredictable teams in football, but still one of the better teams in football. So they stay in the top 10. Pittsburgh moves up 5 spots to number 11. They get a huge win at home over a Colts team whose offense was, like we talked about earlier, one of the best over the last 25 years. And the fact that they shut them down, only allowed a touchdown till midway through the fourth quarter. Big bounce back for the Steelers. Baltimore moves up 7. They're getting healthy. Lamar's back. They look great. Won't be surprised if they come all the way back and win the AFC North. Denver wins, but I move them down a spot because it was just a completely unimpressive offensive performance against the Houston Texans. Defensively, we know that they're pretty good. Offensively, there's a lot to be desired there. I just don't take them seriously as a Super Bowl threat because of that. San Francisco stays put at 14. The Chargers move down a few spots just because of how things with Baltimore and Pittsburgh go. I just think that they've been a little bit more impressive. The Chargers struggled a little bit against Tennessee. I don't think the Chargers are a bad team, but the fact that Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt are both out for the year, that certainly didn't help their rankings either. The Jaguars win, but I moved them down as well. I understand it's on the road against Vegas. It's a long trip, but only had 3 points at halftime. They're another one of those teams that is just very unpredictable and very inconsistent offensively. Right now, I believe that they hold a playoff spot if the season ended today. And so we'll see if that big win over Kansas City on Monday night ends up being what keeps them in the postseason once we get to January. The Bears, I kept them put at 17. Obviously, a tremendous offensive output. They allowed over 40 points on defense, though. That's something they'll need to clean up. Minnesota moves up 3 spots after beating Detroit. J.J. McCarthy, 3 total touchdowns on the day. Nice bounce back performance from Minnesota. And a good performance from J.J. McCarthy, who, 7 out of the 8 previous quarters of football he played weren't very good. So nice performance from him. The Panthers, I guess I'll put them here. They're 5-4. They just beat the Packers. They've beaten Dallas on the year. I still don't think they're good, but they're 5-4, and that's the same record as the Chiefs, which is very weird. 19, I guess. I moved the Cardinals up a lot. I think they were the biggest riser of the week, up 9 spots. Jacoby Brissett has that offense looking actually pretty solid. He's the best quarterback on the roster, and that's been pretty much confirmed by what appears to be the best way to mask a benching that the Cardinals are doing right now with the Kyler Murray situation. Brissett's the best quarterback they have. Kyler Murray will be playing somewhere else next year. And defensively, the Cardinals have been pretty solid as well. Dallas moves down 6 spots. I just can't take them seriously anymore, man. Offensively, if they're not scoring 30 points a game, they're going to lose. And they did not look good offensively against Arizona. So they rely far too much on the offense to be flawless, to be taken seriously whatsoever. The Texans rely far too much on their defense to be flawless, to be taken seriously. CJ Stroud goes out with a concussion. Looks like he's not going to be playing this week against Jacksonville. So their season very much could be done at this point, especially CJ Stroud misses a lot of time. And if they lose to Sunday on Jacksonville, I think you can stick a fork in Houston. Atlanta, I kept them put. I didn't move them up or down. I know that they lost to New England, but that was a hard-fought game that if not for was it Parker Romo, the field goal kicker, he missed an extra point. That game could have gone to overtime and might have had a different result. Washington moves down 4 spots. They get blown out on Sunday nights against Seattle. Jaden Daniels with the elbow injury. We'll see if he can somehow come back before the end of this season. But being 3-6 right now, not a good spot for them to be in. The Giants move down a few more spots. They lose again to San Francisco. Fun team to watch. Jackson Dart's very fun, but there's just not enough horses right there offensively without Cam Scatterbu and Malik Neighbors. The Browns, sure, they'll move up a spot simply because the Bengals moved down a couple spots. The Browns aren't good. They were on a bye. Oh, excuse me. They're going into a bye. So nothing really to talk about when it comes to Cleveland. But Cincinnati, that defense is historically horrible. The fact that they came back from 2 scores down, took a lead with less than a minute left, and then allowed Colston Loveland to break 3 tackles all at once and get a touchdown says a lot about them. So defensively, they're horrible. Joe Flacco had the game of his life, and it didn't matter. Really just disappointing effort from Cincinnati. Their season, again, they're 3-6. It feels all but done. The Saints are 28. I kept them where they are. I moved the Dolphins down to 29. That team, again, these final 5 teams, their seasons are done. Really, you could probably say the last column, the season is done. From 25 to 32, these teams are in mock draft season. So 29 is the Dolphins. They don't put up a touchdown against Baltimore on Thursday night. The Raiders move up a spot because they at least put up a fight. And if not for a batted down pass thrown by Geno Smith on a 2-point conversion, they have an extra win right now. The Jets are still bad, and the Titans are still the worst team in football to round out the Week 10 power rankings here on the Pump Fake. And that'll take us into Thursday Night Football. Denver and Las Vegas. Thursday Night Football games are weird. We know that. The game's in Denver, though. I expect Denver to win. But maybe that's a little bit of reverse psychology, because every time I've bet on them to lose, they end up winning. So if I bet on them to win, maybe they'll lose. We'll see. Or at least if I say publicly that they'll win, perhaps they'll lose. They are 8.5-point favorites. I think that's a little bit hefty. I think Vegas can cover an 8.5-point spread. So maybe that's the play. Over under 42.5 according to FanDuel. So maybe an 8.5-point spread there. I feel like Vegas can cover that. That's a big number. So perhaps that'll be the play this week, especially if Vegas can limit Denver from scoring, because Denver's offense isn't very good. So if it's a low-scoring game, again, the over-under 42.5. Maybe you go do a little 2-leg parlay. The Raiders to cover and the under comes out to plus 253. There you go. Throw a 50 burger on it, net over 100. That sounds pretty good to me. We'll be back later on in the week to preview Week 9 in the NFL. If you're listening on the Believe in Steelers podcast feed, a lot of fun stuff coming. We'll do the Steelers-Chargers preview, but also Saturday, very special guest, which I will talk about on the Believe in Steelers podcast. So that'll be a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you later on in the week right here on the Pump Fake.